Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Modern Life. We're going to be talking about A Little Princess today. Tabby invited over her friend Brittni to discuss the book and the different movie versions of that story. I personally didn't read or see any of those, but I'll still be in the background giving my 2 cents. If you are listening, I just want to thank you for supporting the podcast. You can always find us on Instagram and Twitter at Modern Life Pod, and you can also email us. The email address is modernlifepod@gmail.com. We would love to hear your feedback or any ideas you might have for things you want us to talk about are always appreciated. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Alrighty, we're back here. It's me, Tabby, and I have Brittni here with me today.
Hi,
Brittni, how you
I'm
doing?
here today.
Perfect. And my brother Sam's here as well.
What's going on? I'm sidekicking it.
Jibber jabbering it with us. All right, Brittni, what you got for us for a modern thought?
Oh, okay. Well, my modern thought is, this year I decided to make a list of, New Year's goals because I wanted to try to be beneficial to the world and myself. And I got 2 of them checked off in 1 week. And I was, really honestly surprised with myself and proud of myself and excited about it. So, does that count as modern thought?
Yeah, what were they? What were you doing?
Literally anything counts as a modern thought.
The first one was to get my own phone plan because I've been on my parents for so long.
But isn't that more expensive?
It's the same monthly. I had to get a new phone, which I needed one anyways really bad. But, I got a good deal on the phone because I was getting a new phone plan. So, it, all worked out well. But it's, the same. Before I had unlimited talk, text, and data for $60. And I still have unlimited talk, text, and data for $60. So
that's pretty cheap.
Yeah. So, I'm stoked about it.
What's the other one?
And the other one is a gym membership, which I am getting that tomorrow. So, I haven't done it yet, but it'll be still in the same.
Trying to get shredded?
Oh, yeah.
Is this because of Chantal? They've been going to the gym.
Chantal did, she was the one that got me excited about it. But I also feel like I have so much pent-up aggravation sometimes. I want to put that into something physical.
I like it.
I'm really excited to try that.
So, just for our listeners, Chantal is the most shredded person I've ever met. Yeah, we all used to work with her.
And
she's not even 21 yet, right?
She just turned 21 last year. Or she just turned 22 a month ago.
Did she get that firefighter job?
She is still looking for stations. So she's done everything, but she just has to get accepted into a station, and I guess that's kind of hard to do. A lot of times they're full, and but the one thing
competitive.
But the one thing that she does have going for her is a lot of times there's a lot of stations looking for women firefighters, because that's so scarce. So a lot of stations want that. So I think that she'll find somewhere soon.
Yeah, she's shredded.
Yeah, so you just look at her once and you're like, yeah, she could carry a body out of a building.
Yeah,
Totally.
10 bodies,
10
no
bodies.
problem.
I feel like
Fine.
so she has this personality. I feel like the building is burning down, and she's running in there, and she's got someone over her shoulder, and she's just walking out with a smile.
She's running in smiling and running out smiling. Only person I know that would run into run into a fire smiling.
Yeah, seriously.
I wouldn't even run into the fire. Firefighting in general is just amazing to me.
Yeah. I'm good for you. I don't like sweating, so we're not gonna get near the fire.
Okay,
you're gonna have to wait. You're going to.
I know. I'm gonna
you're going to the gym. You're gonna have to like sweating.
I know. I'm not looking forward to that part. So,
Tabby, what you got?
Okay, so I recently went to WonderCon, and I kind of joke about it, I'm doing my nerd stuff this weekend.
That's poor man's Comic-Con.
No, I think it's better than Comic-Con, but it's a affiliation of Comic-Con. But even if you're not into any of these nerd things and you just go for for the panels, which I go to almost every panel I can go to, you meet so many people from the industry and you absorb so much information about all different kinds of technology and movie making and so forth. Just going for that is, I think, really valuable because we live in Southern California and all these people are here to go to these events.
Yeah.
Where else do I get to hear like the main editor for Black Panther talk. You know, like it's
for sure. Yeah,
Not in Denver.
not in Denver. And this one panel that I went to, it was called The Psychology of Cult TV Shows. And they talked about incorporating trauma into storytelling. And they had a comic book artist, a psychologist. They had, I think, the writer for the new Punisher series. And all the research they did that went into that, and talking with people they can't even, you know, they had to interview anonymously all these special unit, like PTSD victims and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
And the psychologist on there, her name was Janina Scarlett, and I actually looked her up. She does a special kind of treatment with her patients where she incorporates like superheroes and stories into treating people with PTSD.
Oh, I love that.
I've heard of that with books. I haven't heard of it specifically with superheroes. Yeah. But the way she describes it is that these people, like, witnessing what they're going through can sometimes help you, you know, going through your own personal things. And then these people become almost like surrogate, like stand-in friends, which makes total sense to me that you would get attached to like a fictional character, and that could help you through something.
I get attached to fictional characters all the time.
Yeah, and
so,
her work, she's actually won like awards for it. She has books written about it. And on our website, there's people can send in questions, and here's just a really good example of like how this would work. And this is just her writing and responses. This isn't an actual session. But somebody is writing in saying, I've been diagnosed with psychotic depression, PTSD, anxiety. I've always wanted to be strong and always wanted to be Superman, but I'm not Superman. And then she responds, you know what I really love about Superman? He's unique. There's no one like him. He's an alien from another planet. He's experienced severe losses and trauma. There aren't a lot of people that really get him. He protects people, and he has many vulnerabilities because he's being misunderstood and rejected. And that's what makes him remarkable. So she breaks down these characters in a way that the patients can relate to them and understand them. So, and the whole panel was so eye-opening and so moving that I kept almost like crying, and I was like, keep it together. But then when I walked out, like so many other audience members were like crying, or people around me were crying because the stuff they were talking about was so meaningful. So I thought that was really interesting. New way of like looking at psychology.
That's awesome.
That's it.
So wait, was she inspired to do that because of all the superhero stuff that's coming out, or?
She's into superheroes. She has a background,
like herself.
But then she also noticed that many of her patients, especially veterans, would identify with that. And there's actually a huge history in I think it was World War II, of mostly soldiers reading comic books and being sent comic books.
That's crazy.
So I think that kind of, and these, I don't know, people, maybe soldiers are just into that, or a lot of her patients were into, and to her, she saw it as like an access point into them by talking about the things they were interested in. So.
I can kind of see that. My dad's a cop, and I think that the only reason he wanted to be that is because like he loves superheroes so much, and that's like to him, that's like the closest he could get.
Interesting. So maybe there is a relationship
like
there.
Thinking.
Yeah.
Damn.
So deep.
No, it's cool.
I love that. Yeah.
Alrighty. So let's dive into the main topic. A Little Princess by Frances, I can never say her name, Hodgson Burnett. I can never say her last name. Book written was published in 1905, and then we also have the Shirley Temple version from 1939, and then the 1995 version as well.
You did all this research, you don't know how to pronounce her last name?
I don't know how to pronounce that name.
Who are you?
We should have looked it up on YouTube.
Hodgson?
I've been saying like Hodgsons.
Yeah, okay. Let's go
that's right. Hodgins.
Brittni went deep. She's like, I'm watching the Shirley Temple version. I read the book.
Well, because like when I actually did a book report on this in high school, and it was funny because Tabby texted me and was like, oh, like you probably don't want to do that one because you probably don't know what it is. And I was like, actually, I did a whole book report on this, so I actually know it pretty well. And I hadn't watched the movie, so I went to like try to find it, but it wasn't.
Either of them? You hadn't seen either of them?
I hadn't seen either of them. I only had read the book. And so I found the Shirley Temple one on like Prime Video, And I was like, okay, well, I'll watch that one. And then it wasn't like super accurate with the book. And I was like, well, now I want to watch the other one and see if it's like more accurate with the book. And that one was closer. And they were both great. I cried on both of them. Yeah.
I have really fond special memories with the 1995 one. I think it was just on TV a lot. And it's just such a moving story that it's one of those stories that I watched when I was little. The Shirley Temple version, to me, was a little bit awkward at times.
Yeah, it was definitely like, it was not as, like I said, accurate or like fluid. But I love Shirley Temple ever since I was little. I've like always loved her. So I was like, oh yeah, I have to watch this one because like I love her. And I cried really hard in the scene where she's like saying bye to her dad and she's like looking out the window and like saying that poem over and over. Oh my gosh! And like I think it's because I don't live with my dad, and so I was like relating so hard to it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, girl, I feel you. I know what you're going through.
So the Shirley Temple one takes place in England, like the book does.
Right.
But, okay, I don't know if you've read some of the, like, Amazon trivia, but it said that on one of her costumes, they, like, reshot the whole scene because they found out the clasp on one of her dresses wasn't invented yet, so they remade the whole costume. They care so deeply about that, but then everybody just speaks in whatever accent they want.
Right, I know, right?
There's like, the Indian guy is played by like a Cuban man, right? And then like Shirley Temple just does like an American accent.
I know, the whole time she's just straight doing. I was really confused about that.
It's like, where are we?
Yeah. What are we doing?
I think every time you mention the Indian guy, I'm gonna like put in some of those Indian wind chimes in the background. I only caught the end of this movie, like walking in on Tabby watching it, and there's every time the guy comes on screen, it's like
that's the
95.
Yes.
Let's talk about how racist that movie is.
Yeah, every time I was like, what? Like every time that he would come on the screen, I would be like, why are we doing that? It's taking me out of the story. Like I would be like so into it, and then I'd be like, oh, there they are again.
And as a kid, I was like, oh, it just doesn't make any sense that the monkey brought all this furniture over. Like, but now I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, it's the racist magical brown man trope. Like now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, it's super racist. But in a fun way.
in a heartwarming way.
It's so bad.
No, yeah. I obviously I read the book first, so I knew it wasn't the monkey, but I could see where you would think it was the monkey, obviously.
Well, because also in the book is, I mean, it came out in 1905. It's also kind of racist because they say that
obviously
Ram Dass is like, oh, he's so exotic and agile, so he's the only one who can climb down into the window to like drop off all this stuff.
Yeah.
But at least in the book, they do it whenever she's working all day. So when she comes back, there's like new things there, and it happens
made more sense
gradually.
Yeah. And that's when both of them, when I watched them, and it was like when she just woke up, I was like, what?
Yeah.
How do you sleep through that?
Yeah.
But okay.
And like also at the end, why did the Indian guy have to come up to the dad and like intensely look at him for him to like be cured of amnesia? Like, it's so awkward. Yeah. Like it was moving when I was a kid, and it's still moving now to see him like run out to his daughter. But
yeah, that scene I was actually more like touched in the Shirley Temple one when she's like shaking her father. And she's like, I'm Sarah. And I was like, she's Sarah, damn it. Remember her. And like I was like more torn up in that scene than in the other one because he was like, they were just taking her away, and I was like, damn, that sucks.
So wait, what I didn't get was the magical Indian man in what's the version that you watched?
The 95.
The 95 version.
Yeah.
Could he have cured that guy's amnesia all along with his magic?
He was like, oh, now that I know this is his daughter, I'll let him remember.
Just like, let me stare into your brain and fix your amnesia. I
could have done this before, but it's more important now.
Also, both versions are really set on the dad still being alive, which does work in a movie. Like,
I guess. I don't know. I thought I really liked that aspect in the book of like his friend like didn't know
that she lives next
who
door
Sarah
the whole
was.
time.
Well, like didn't even know, like, because he saw her and he was like, oh, like, yeah, like the little girl that works next door, but he had no idea that was her. I'm like, I loved at the end that it was like, oh, this was her all along, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I thought they were gonna do that in the '95 version, because that's what I watched, the Shirley Temple one, and I was like, oh, they didn't made her father still alive. I want to watch the other one and see if they.
Yeah, and it's the same.
And then, yeah, and it's the same, and I was like, oh, well, okay, that's fine.
They do. So the Shirley Temple version has some really strange, like, musical scenes.
Yes.
And, like, a weird rhyming dream sequence.
Yeah. The poem thing, yeah.
But then it just ends also without resolution for a lot of the characters. So I'm like, you had time for that, but you didn't have time for an ending.
Yeah.
There's, like, a scene where she's in the hospital looking for her dad, and she's like, he's not here again, and she's super sad. And then everyone's like, but you can sing and dance. And she's like, okay, I will.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's kind of all of Shirley Temple's movies, though. Like, it'll be something super depressing, and they'll be like, then all of a sudden she'll be like, yeah, like, okay, I'm gonna dance about it.
It was really tonally, like, it's weird.
That's kind of Shirley Temple's brand. Weird dancing. But yeah, that's just kind of how all of her movies go, I feel. And I think it was just because people are like, oh, that little girl can sing and dance. Let's exploit it. And every movie she does. And so, yeah, I feel like that's why that was there. And as soon as I saw the scene, the dream one, I was like, oh, classic Shirley Temple. Obviously, they have to put this in here.
It's like the Middle Ages, like, dream nothing makes any sense.
It reminded me exactly of, in Heidi, there's this scene where she's, like, in the Netherlands, and they do this whole scene about, she's, like, dancing with wooden shoes. And it has nothing to do with...
Wait, why is she in the Netherlands? How did she get from the Alps?
It's in a dream. She's dreaming. Yeah, I know. And, like, that's the whole scene is, like, it's, like, all these little girls, and, like, she has these special wooden shoes that she's,
clogs?
like... Yeah. And that's the whole, like, that was the whole thing. And, you know, I was very confused when I read Heidi for the first time, and that wasn't in the book. I was like, wait a second, what about that dream? But yeah, that's like a classic. I feel like almost every Shirley Temple movie has a moment like that where you're like, well, this isn't right, but okay. We'll go with it anyways.
Have you seen any other Shirley Temple movies?
No, I haven't.
I don't think I've ever seen a single one.
I was like obsessed with her when I was a little girl, so I had like a box set of like all her movies. And yeah, so I related very well. That's why I cried so hard in that one, just because I grew up with Shirley Temple, and yeah.
You probably have some wooden shoes in your closet.
You know what? I just might. I practiced that dance.
I see you with the dirndl on.
Yeah.
And like that.
Yeah, I just wanted to be Shirley Temple, so I went and bought wooden shoes. Yeah, pretty much.
But in relationship to that, the story scenes that kind of mirror that in the 90s version.
Yes.
Where Sarah
is like telling the stories of the prince and the princess.
Yeah, what is it called? I have it written down somewhere. It's the Ramayana, I believe. It's like a classic Indian tale.
Oh, I did not know that.
And the people in it are the dad and the mom. Those are the same actors.
The dad and the mom.
They play like the blue guy. I forget his name.
Oh.
It's the same actor.
Really?
Because that story mirrors what's going on in real life. So I felt like it was more justified with the dad being alive because her story narrates the...
I totally did not catch that at all. I thought she was just telling the story.
No, because like when...
But now that I see it, like now I understand
the prince
more.
is supposed to be dead, it's the scene in the movie where there's like a big war scene and we think the dad has just died from like poisonous gas, but then like the prince comes back to life, and that's when we have the hospital scene where the dad's suddenly alive again. So
now it's making sense. Wow.
So I thought that was clever and not like the Shirley Temple like really weird scenes that they put in there.
No, I think that those transitions are a little more natural.
And even though the CGI is terrible, but I mean, it's still fun to watch.
It can't all be Jurassic Park.
Well, that wasn't even CGI, right? They had like puppets.
Had some CGI.
Oh, some CGI.
Because that was the first time they were like, "Hey, we have this new thing called CGI. Let's see what it does." But they did use puppets too, which I think helped.
He makes real props with the CGI,
which is like why it works so well. Yeah,
it's still, to me, totally off subject. That first Jurassic Park still looks better than like
anything that
the
we've
new
ever seen.
ones.
Oh yeah, it does.
The last two new ones, I'm like, the CGI looks terrible.
Yeah.
Like it looks better. Same with like the first Matrix movie, right?
Yeah.
That CGI still holds up over like the second or third Matrix movie.
Yeah,
because you're mixing real with CGI instead of
yeah,
only
exactly.
using CGI.
I was so mad at about the first one that I didn't even watch the second one. That's how like upset I was. So yeah, like the first one looks but yeah. Anyways, back to Little Princess.
I think it's the first time anyone's compared Jurassic Park with
Little Princess.
But yeah, the CGI was a little cringy, but it was still, it was a dream, so it was fine, That's how it worked.
I have to talk about the fact that Queen Victoria shows up at the end of the Shirley Temple movie.
Yes. Yes.
It's almost, at that part, I'm like, is this just Americans not understanding British culture, or are they trying to make fun of British? Is it like trying to be a satire? Why is Queen Victoria there? Like,
but she said her name was Natalia.
No, it's Queen Victoria. Oh. Yeah.
Oh, well.
I just recognized her right away that she was, I don't know, she only wore black and so on and so forth. But
I was like, okay, this is obviously a queen, and then they were like, oh, Natalia, and I was like, what queen is that?
Oh yeah, they said Victoria, but it was just so cheesy and just so, like embarrassing.
It was a little weird.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, make sure she finds her father. I don't know if he's dead or not, but yeah, like, I hope you do. I'm going to go back to, like, doing what I'm doing now. And I was like, why is she even there? Like, what's happening?
So the 95 version, I kind of want to talk about the colors a little bit. Yeah. Because it's mostly greens and oranges.
Yeah, I could see that. It was definitely very colorful.
And that could be very garish, but this movie did it in a way where it all blended in harmoniously. Like, the house is green, the costumes are green, the school outfits are green, and then balloons at the party, and then the doll is orange, the room is orange, the Indian. It's like this contrast between like themes also. Yeah, in the movie. And also the sets are amazing. Those sets that they built for it, like the street, it looks like a real.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of background work before what I do now. So probably for that, I'm guessing they used, they call them like the New York streets. I'm using quotations right now, but you can't see that. The New York streets. And they would call them backlots. And like, it's basically just fake streets, like just giant fake streets. The biggest one in LA is the one in Universal. And, like, they vary in sizes. Like, sometimes they can just be, like, one little street. Sometimes it's, like, almost a whole city. And so I'm guessing that's probably what they use for that. And most of the time, they will just pay the studios to use those lots. And they have to either, like, dress it up to make it look older or make it look more modern. It just depends on what it is. But I'm guessing that's what they probably use it. But it looked great. It definitely looked beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I also really like Miss Minchin's entrance coming down the stairs.
I love that too.
And again, it's another character that I think could be very cartoonish because she has like the gray strands in her hair. But they do it again in a way that's just tells younger audiences like, oh, this is a character you should be afraid of. Also, the way Sarah hides behind her dad as soon as she's like coming down the stairs.
Like, oh, we're supposed to be intimidated by it. Like, this is the bad guy.
Right. Oh, and then also the font on the sign, it says like Miss Minchin's School for Girls. Yeah. It looks like a Goosebumps font. Like it looks like a horror.
It was supposed to look scary. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and then the school sign they have at the end is just like normal writing. It's like copper plate or some, something respectable.
So it's supposed to be like, okay, now this is a fun place to come.
But it's all these little things that you can really put in there to create a mood without telling the audience, I think. So
for sure.
I don't know, worked for me.
Yeah. I thought that the sister Amelia was a little it wasn't how I like imagined her when I read the book, and then when I saw the character I was like, oh, okay. But she definitely came off more like airheady. Yeah. Than I was expecting her like to be played off. I
like that storyline they put in with the milkman.
Yeah, that was cute.
And also, they do a little bit of commentary when they're sitting on the steps, and she's like, I don't even like teaching. I don't even like kids.
Right,
but
right.
At that time, teaching is like the only job available to single women.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you don't really have a choice.
Right.
The only thing that bothered me a little bit is the like her jumping out the window, because it feels like one of those like fat jokes. You know what I mean? Like, this is only funny because she's overweight.
Yeah.
And I'm just like over that, but this is a film from the 90s. So.
That's true too. Yeah, so they probably weren't thinking of that. But yeah, that was that whole like when she was throwing everything out the window and jumping out the window was a little cringy. When they locked the door, I was just like, "Are you kidding me? Like, is there only one key?
Yeah.
Like, what? Just unlock the door and leave."
That's
like,
true.
What?
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it was a little odd, but I was like, all right. And I get it. Like, we had to make this dramatic. She has to go out the window. She can't just walk out the door.
Or like the cellar door too. There's like multiple exits.
There's multiple doors, but you know it wouldn't be dramatic. Like there wouldn't be a storyline if she wasn't jumping out the window. That's what we have to do that.
But with her being gone, you also don't get this. This is like the only place I've marked in the book, and they have the book in front of me right now, where she has this outburst at the end when Sarah is taken in by the friend, and she finally escapes.
Yeah.
The seminary, and she starts speaking up to her older sister, and the older sister's like, how dare you say such things to me? And she goes, I don't know how I dare, but now that I started, I'm gonna finish.
Yeah.
And she's like, so I'm just gonna read from it. She saw through us both. She saw that you were a hard-hearted woman, and that I was a weak fool, and that we were both of us vulgar and mean enough to grovel on our knees for her money and behave ill to her because it was taken from her. Though she behaved herself like a little princess. She did like a little princess, and she has this like hysterical moment, but it's so satisfying for her to realize like, I'm just as bad as you because I did nothing. Yeah. I just watched.
Yeah,
you know?
That, and then just also just coming to the realization of like that she can speak to her sister that way.
Yeah.
Like that her sister isn't like, what is she gonna do?
Which is like it was a really nice moment in the book, but you don't get that in any of
you don't. She just leaves.
Actually, I guess there's like the brother character in the Shirley Temple one.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That they do reflect that more in the Shirley Temple version, where he like kind of stands up to her, which is nice. We kind of get that moment. I actually really liked him
as a character.
Yeah, I like that they did that, because at first I thought it was a little weird, and I was like, no, I actually like this. I think that this is, and I feel like that's what it was supposed to be. I feel like the reason they did it was because it was more accepted for a man to kind of behave that way.
Yeah,
and it was more like odd for a woman to be that way, and that's probably why they did that in that version. And then still in the 95, we don't even get the moment.
Yeah.
So maybe 220. I'll make it.
They'll make another one,
and we'll get that moment. But yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Also, the line that I find really strange is when the dad says goodbye and he goes, "We'll write to each other every day," and I'm like, that's a lot of pressure.
And the Shirley Temple
every day, one? Like no, I think it's in the 95
really?
one.
Yeah, that is a lot.
Woke up. Went to school, had French class.
Hate my classes.
Bye.
Hate my teacher.
Every day.
Yeah.
He's like going to a ward too.
I know.
Like, how is all these letters going to reach him?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. But, you say what you got to say.
Oh, speaking of French, so Miss Minchin's French is pretty terrible, which I love, because it's supposed to be
And she
terrible.
was like trying to be like, she knows French so well.
Right.
She's just so educated.
And then actually the French teacher, when Sarah comes out first time as a servant, and the Miss Minchin is like, no one's supposed to talk to her, she's a servant now. In French, the French teacher says like, oh, I'm not okay with this. But I don't know if you would catch that if you didn't speak
I don't speak French. So I didn't
but
know that.
I thought it was interesting that he did speak up and like say something, but there's nothing he could do about it.
Aww,
so
yeah.
Go French teacher.
Go French teacher. Go you. For not accepting child labor. We love that.
Yeah, that was still pretty accepted. I mean, some industries kind of had laws around it, but especially domestics and servitude, like inside a house, it was still very much a thing that kids were. That leads me
off.
to another really fun fact. When there's like the funny scene of the little like chimney sweeper boy.
Yeah.
And he like falls down the chimney, and then at the end of the movie, Miss Minchin is like
chimney sweeping.
a chimney sweeper. There's no way she would be a chimney sweeper.
I know.
She's way too tall. She's way
too old and a woman.
So
in that time period, they'd be like, no, get out of my house.
And also something that's really horrifying is that all chimney sweeps in the States were black kids.
Yeah.
And which made their lives even harder. And my brother and I did some research on Victorian chimney sweeps. It is absolutely horrifying.
Because I didn't know anything about this until you mentioned it.
So they would snatch up these kids when they were like 5 or 6.
Oh my God.
They wouldn't feed them, so they would stay smaller and fit up the chimney. They would never be washed, so they would develop really terrible scrotal cancer because the coal would like go up your butt. What else? What else is there?
Well, what I thought, so the reason why all that started happening is so you used to have these like big, wide, normal chimneys for wood fireplaces.
Yeah.
And then with all this rapid expansion happening, you know, especially in the big cities in England with the Industrial Revolution and everything, you just had all this completely unregulated, you know, people just building homes left and right with like no regulation at all, and it was all with new coal fireplaces. And with coal fireplaces, you need like way smaller. It can't be like a big wide chimney. I'm not really sure why that is, but maybe it's just like too much air coming down or whatever. So they would build these really narrow chimneys, and then because everything's unregulated and everyone's just kind of building all over the place on top of each other, these chimneys wouldn't just go like straight up like a normal chimney. They'd be all crooked with all kinds of twists and turns in them. So you have that on top of the fact that it's a super narrow chimney. So that's when they just start sending these either tiny people or like little kids down there to, you know.
And they would get stuck in the maze because it's dark and you can't see, and you'd have to remember.
So sad. You're telling me that's not like Mary Poppins?
No.
Oh God, no.
And they would suffocate in there.
Oh my gosh, this is horrible.
From like the soot, their eyes would get infected. If you Google pictures of these kids, their knees are all deformed from like climbing on chimneys.
It's horrible.
If they got stuck, another kid would crawl up from the bottom and like tie a rope around their ankle and yank them down. Or if sometimes the kid obviously didn't want to get back out of the chimney because they hate their life, I'm sure, and you just so then the master chimney sweep or whatever they were called would like, oh, the chimney's clean, so let's light a fire because it's gonna get so hot in there that the kid's gonna have to crawl out or like burn.
That's where the phrase "lighting a fire under somebody."
Oh my gosh, that's so
all
horrible.
Kinds of crazy stuff.
That's traumatizing.
This was like not that long ago. I feel
my gosh.
Fun times.
Yeah.
And
love humanity.
And credit to British people, they weren't the only ones doing this. It was really prominent in what was like France, England, France, Netherlands,
and the United States.
In the United States, there was another European, like Denmark or some crap. But yeah, very strange.
Yeah, that's
so it's funny really in the movie, but it was really not that funny in real life.
When I Googled it, like Google Images, all these like little chimney sweep Halloween costume for your kids. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was kind of ironic.
Wow.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like, it's not really what it looked like.
It's not really what they look like. Yeah.
Nobody was smiling.
If we used some enhanced makeup and make it look more real.
Yeah, that's crazy. I had no idea about that.
That is sad. That's really sad.
So another scene I have written down is a scene where Sarah gives Becky those fur slippers, the yellow fur slippers.
Yes.
And it's an interesting scene because she can't wear those.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, as soon as she opened them, I was like, oh, that was really nice, but she can't wear them or she'll probably get, like, beaten.
Yeah, like, she can... We never see those shoes again.
Yeah, because they're, like, obviously, they right away would be like, oh, those aren't yours. You probably stole them. And
yeah.
We're call the police. Here we go. Yeah.
But it's also an interesting illustration of where Sarah is at that moment, that she doesn't understand that.
Right. She has no idea. Like, she doesn't get it.
Yeah. Like, she's trying, but she's
just
also
like, oh, her shoes don't fit. Like, maybe mine will.
You're mine slippers.
Yeah. Here, these are soft. Take these. Yeah.
Oh, the decoration on that birthday cake is insane. I just wanted to point that out.
Well, I can't even remember what it looked like.
It has like, it's all white and has all this like lacing on it, all this lace piping.
Oh.
You're saying it would have crushed at the Great British Bake Off?
At the Great British Bake Off, yes.
You ever watch that, Brittni?
No, I don't.
Oh, you should.
I'm sure my dad does. He watches all of those cooking shows.
Cooking shows, yeah. It's like a Netflix baking show that like blew up because none of the contestants win anything, so everyone's super nice.
What?
It's
like this like grueling
British.
10 weeks they like don't see their family. They have to
Oh my
Bake
god.
they have
the
to
whole
like
time.
bake the entire time because so it's these 2-day competitions, but you have to practice the entire week leading up to that. And then after all that, if you win, you get like a bouquet of flowers and what like
But I'm sure they get paid for the show. You get paid for the episodes.
like
yeah.
like minimum
Most
$200 an episode or something.
most reality shows like that you don't know, but like they have to get paid for it. Like they get paid at least minimum wage.
Right.
It makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
No, I mean I'm sure they get minimum, but it's still
That is insane.
Where they make their money is they usually end up getting like a book deal.
Right,
It's
I'm
like
sure.
they like
What
blow
happens to
up.
all the cake that they bake for weeks?
They throw it out or they give
What?
it to neighbors.
What do you mean they throw it out? That's horrible.
Well, that's what so Tabby loves to bake, but it's like, okay, so you're gonna practice making this cake. You're like, you can't eat all this cake, so
Yeah.
it's just kind of it's the pleasure of like making it and
I give
sharing it with
to
other
them
people.
to give
Yeah,
to work or we throw a lot of it out.
Don't
or-
throw it away. If you
Oh,
ever make a cake, call me.
There's
Don't
some
throw
in
it
the
away.
fridge right now. I believe.
So about that birthday party scene, still talking
Yes.
about the 95 version. The way the set is set up is that Miss Minchin's office is right next to the drawing room where the party is taking
Right.
place. And the balloons, which I found out weren't even invented yet, so those balloons couldn't have been there. But
Well,
Wait, what kind of balloons are they?
They're
there's
like
regular.
latex
Yeah,
balloons.
there's regular like filled with helium.
Was there any balloons before that time?
Hot air balloons.
I guess they
Right.
weren't made out of latex. I don't know
Probably
what kind
like
of
sheep
balloons they
bladder
were, but-
balloons.
Yeah, I mean in Little House on the Prairie they used to make balloons out of pig bladders.
That makes sense.
Just
So-
paint them, right?
No, they wouldn't paint them.
Oh. Okay.
But the line, even though all the doors are open, the line between the office and the party room, all the balloons in that room are in the air, and all the rooms that made it into her office are all deflated and lying on the floor.
Oh,
Which I really loved. Like, just
Yeah.
her energy, almost like her evil energy
it
is
just
like.
sucks the life out of balloons.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And like there was the one balloon that was like
Floating
floating
in there.
into her office,
And
and then
a-
as soon as it got into the office, it popped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of talk about the character of Sarah, because in the book she's Indian.
Yes.
Like there's multiple instances where they talk about her brown skin, or she goes shopping and everyone thinks she's like an Indian princess.
Yeah.
Also at the end when the friend finds her, he's like, "Oh, I would have never picked you because you don't look like your dad."
Right, exactly.
The dad is white. There's so many illustrated versions of this, and even the one right in front of me depicts her as white.
The one that I read in high school, like, yeah, her skin was definitely like very white, but she at least had black hair.
Yeah.
And that's why I was actually really confused when like when I saw the 95, like the picture for the 95 movie, because I was like, that's not what Sarah looks like. Because when my book report was you had to make a children's version of the book you read. So I had to like draw pictures for the book, and like in all the in all of the pages like that I did, like she had black hair, and so I was 100% expecting a little child with black hair, and that was not what we got at all.
Yeah, at least they set it into New York, and they at least have that dynamic with Becky and making that character black and what that
Yes.
means, and they have a conversation about that, which I
Yeah.
think is really significant. But there's such little representation of people of color
Yeah.
in classic novels, and even when there is, like...
So whitewashed.
It's
Yeah.
so whitewashed. It's like a downpour of bleach that chromatizes everything in its wake.
Yeah.
Like every version of Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff is a white guy. Like every version of Jane Eyre, Mrs. Rochester in the Attic is a white woman.
Yeah.
Like this, in both of these movie versions, she's
a little
she's
blonde
white.
girl.
Like,
yeah, not even just white. She's a little blonde girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's just frustrating.
Disappointing.
Because there's a version of Little Dorrit, which is a book by Charles Dickens. And the series I really enjoyed. I haven't read the book. But they made one of the characters black. And there was like an outrage about it, like, this isn't accurate to the book. And I'm like, oh, I didn't see you people coming out of the woodworks with all these like other movies.
That's so like, that reminds me, it's so ironic. In high school, when everyone was reading the Hunger Games,
I'm reading them right now.
Yeah.
The second book.
So the little girl, what was
Prim?
No. Rue, yes, Rue. When I was reading it, I was imagining like a little girl that was black. Like that's
it says it in the book.
Yes, right? That like does it not? And so like they kind of hint like that's how the whole district is, right? So the movie comes out. That's what I was expecting. I was like, they're going to make like, you know, everyone from that district black. Like Rue was going to be a little black girl. And my friend tells me, she's like, I'm so mad that they made Rue black. And I was like, why?
Brittni went to a very special high school.
I did. And I was like, well, why? And she was like, she's supposed to have olive skin.
That's Katniss.
And I was like, I think you're getting her confused with Katniss. And she was like, no, she shouldn't look like that. I was like, okay, well, you know, I think it's fine. Like, I think it's fine. And she was like, well, that's not how I imagined her in my head. And I was like, well, I'm sorry for you, but that's how I imagined her. And I'm pretty sure that's how everyone else imagined her too. So just,
yeah, it's like even when it's written on the page, white people, like, it won't go into their heads.
Like
it won't go into
how can this happen?
Wait, Katniss is supposed to have olive skin?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Jennifer Lawrence is like the whitest girl alive.
Yeah, you're right. Also, a lot of people were really upset Jennifer Lawrence was first casted as that, because also Katniss is supposed to be like this sickly, skinny little girl.
Well, but they're all supposed to be super hungry and starved. You can't do that to real life people.
Well,
so,
yeah,
like,
for sure.
I get that.
But at the same time, Jennifer Lawrence like does not. She looked like a full blossomed woman.
Right. But they always do that. They always cast like people in their 30s to play like teenagers.
Yeah, to play the 15-year-old.
That's fine. Okay, so we're prepping for a Hunger Games podcast.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
That's why I'm reading the books. And there's a lot of the mechanics of dehumanization that enables these things to happen to the kids in the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
I think the author made a very conscious choice that the people who live in the South, the District 11 that's treated the worst, are all black people, like tilling the soil and like
I'm
working
pretty sure
the
that's
land.
like she did that on purpose.
It's like, it's a commentary.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
You missed it, bro. Like, your friend missed it.
I know she did.
Call her up right now.
We don't speak anymore, but I just call her right now. I'm like, hey, I haven't spoken to you in 10 years, but I need to tell you something. But I'm pretty sure she missed it. But you know, that's kind of just where I come from. That's ironic.
Every time Brittni tells me a story about her high school, I'm just like in awe of how terrible.
I was telling her about how I went to like a very like private conservative school, and like we had to wear skirts down to our knees, and it was like we would have to get on our knees, and if our skirts didn't touch the floor, we would get to home. Thing.
Where was this?
West Virginia. So there you go.
If someone depicted your high school in the movie, everyone would be like, "That's way too over the top."
No, I know they would, and that's what when I tell people here, like that's like, oh yeah, this is what whenever we had like formals. They weren't prom at all. Like, we weren't allowed. We had to be 6 inches apart at all times. But whenever we had, like, our formals, we had to get, like, we had to wear our formal dresses at the school, like, in front of a teacher, and they had to, like, approve or, like, not approve.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, and people, like, don't believe me. And I'm like, no, that, like, this happened. Yeah. Yep. And, but actually, the funny thing is, District 12, where Katniss is from, is actually supposed to be West Virginia.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Now there are a lot of forests?
Oh, that's why it's called Wild and Wonderful.
Oh, I don't know anything about geography.
At least we got wild down.
Maybe we have to have Brittni back for the Hunger Games podcast.
Maybe.
Seems like she knows a lot.
Like, it was an obsession for a little while. But yeah.
Shirley Temple, Hunger
Shirley
Games.
Temple, Hunger Games. That was my childhood right there.
I don't even know how we got on Hunger Games.
Because of Rue and
oh yeah.
That was how we got there. But yeah.
A question I had about the movie, because they say that the neighbor's son and the dad were in the same regiment, and that's how they got mixed up.
Yeah.
I tried to Google this, and I could not find anything. Can people from different countries be in the same regiment? Because he was in the British Army.
You're asking the wrong person. I
could not find an answer to this online. I don't know why, but
I don't know.
What I thought was going to happen was like the neighbor's son was going to go, and then they were going to become friends, and then the dad was going to die, and then he was going to come back, and I was like, oh, that's how they become friends. Like, that's what I thought was going to happen. I was like, that's so clever, like how they did that. And then that didn't happen, and I was like, oh, never mind.
What World War One? What war is this?
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to look this up.
Please.
Please hold.
No, I'll get back to you
Just
later.
Kidding. But, yeah.
Oh, also something, and I've seen this movie so many times, and every time I sit down to watch a movie for the podcast, I notice like 20 more things because I'm like actively watching it. All the green in the movie, like the mason jars in the kitchen are green. If there's a card in the background with fruit on it, it's only green vegetables.
That's crazy.
All the fruit is green, like the grapes, the apples. There isn't any like type of food almost.
I'm really sad I missed this because green's my favorite color. I didn't even notice.
Just like Katniss Everdeen.
Yeah.
The ending where like the police is more concerned with like catching a child than her safety, and there's like
I know
5 officers coming in the middle of the night, like, oh yeah, this is a priority, a little child.
I know.
We have to send the whole station.
No, and then literally she's like walking across, and they're all just like standing there. Like, I'm surprised that they weren't like, well, let's have some of us go downstairs in case if she falls.
Or get like a rope.
Or something.
Like,
they're just like, oh, she's crossing. She's crossing. And then they're like, oh, she made it. Okay, let's go arrest her. Let's get her, boys. Yeah.
Like 5 guys show up at midnight in the rain. Like, there's nothing else to do.
And they're not walking in the building. They're like running in there.
But like 5 guys show up at midnight in the rain to detain a little girl. Like, yeah. And they literally had like 3 men holding Becky, and I was like, she's like 50 pounds.
That was like their SWAT team back then.
Yeah. They were like, well, it's happening, boys. It's happening. Something. Let's go. That's pretty much, yeah. I was like, what is it?
Yeah, they show up in like a giant van. They all like storm
I
out
know,
the
like
back.
literally, like this giant security van. And it's like they're, with all their might, when they're like pulling her away and she's like reaching for her dad. And I was like, really? Like, you need 3 men to detain this little girl? Like, is she really that strong? I don't think so. Yeah, that was a little.
Power of love.
Yeah.
Also, when she like falls off the board and suddenly like catches onto the edge, even like my brother's watching it and she's like, oh, freaking Jason Bourne over here.
Yeah, when the board falls out under her, she's like, like one arm.
Like
oh
Nathan
my
Drake.
God.
Yeah. That was dramatic. I was just like, okay, I mean, she's not gonna die, but what's happening right now? I was crying the whole, like, every time she said bye to her dad, or like her dad wrote a letter, I was just crying. So I feel like I wasn't able to pay attention to details so much, because especially the Shirley Temple one, I was crying really hard on that one. Because, you know, Shirley Temple, she does it for me every time.
I found out, so I don't know anything about Shirley Temple. I found out that she was like an ambassador. She ended up doing all this political work. She was like a good human being. She like died of like smoking too many cigarettes, but she never smoked in public because she didn't want to set a bad example
for her fans. Yeah,
so I'm like, oh, that's nice.
I know. I loved her. She was so adorable.
Seems like a solid human being.
Yeah, she was pretty great.
Apparently, the girl that plays Lavinia in the Shirley Temple version got so much hate mail from Shirley's fans because they didn't realize it was like she was acting. She was like the mean girl.
How could you be horrible to Shirley Temple? She's so perfect.
Oh, it's kind of obnoxious. Which, that scene in the 95 version where they hug at the end and everything's okay. I feel like that was only possible because in the book, Lavinia's the one who tells Miss Minchin, like, oh, they're having secret gatherings in the attic.
Right.
So she's like, she's so extra evil that them taking that out in the movie, like, they couldn't have had that and then had them reconcile.
There's no way. Yeah. There's no way.
Which, yeah, I don't know. I kind of like that they ended up being friends.
Yeah, I like that too. Because it, like, kind of like, oh, everyone gets a happy ending. Like, even Lavinia gets a happy ending. Yeah. So it's fine. Like, we're all... Yeah. Everyone, even... I mean, Miss Minchin didn't, but that's fine. She didn't deserve one, so it's fine. Amelia got her milkman. Everyone lived happily ever
Sarah's
after.
like, you could be off somewhere exotic with the milkman.
I know.
I'm like, oh yeah, because the milkman's wage and income are so high that they can run away to Hawaii.
He's gonna take you to some tropical island. Yeah, pretty much.
It's like, I don't think that's happening.
We can dream.
What are you finding over there about regiments?
Yeah, I think regiments is just...
in the country, right?
Yeah, that's like for each individual country.
Too.
They tried.
Yeah.
This movie makes no sense. It's okay.
I mean,
it's fine.
You have all these different countries fighting alongside each other in World War I, but they would each have their own...
Yeah, because you're not gonna not gonna be like, all right, you're next. That's the next country. Our country's full.
Some guy from the British Army isn't gonna control soldiers from like the French Army. I don't know.
Yeah.
We've sent all our men. Time to move to you.
Which those war scenes, those really, like, those hit me in the feels. Like, they did that so well. And they must just use the same set over and over for all these war movies.
Probably. I'm sure they do, yeah.
Like, it always looks really good. And
Yeah, it looked really sad. It reminded me of in Wonder Woman.
Oh, yeah. Which I'm sure is the same set.
Yeah, I'm sure they use the same one. Yeah.
You should see that documentary from Peter Jackson. Remember the one I watched?
Yeah.
Was it They Shall Not Grow Old? I think that's what it's called. It's really good. It's all about like World War One.
Interesting.
He took all this old like 9mm World War One black and white footage and like frame by frame his team like made colorized it and made it into HD widescreen format and then they got these professional lip readers to like look at the footage and go, well, this is what these guys are saying, and then they got voice actors to then dub over that, so it like brings World War One to life because we're just so used to seeing these black and white photos, and I don't know, you don't get the same impact, I think. So when it then like you get it in like color HD with sound, you're like, oh, holy shit!
Like, oh, that's real blood. Yeah,
like, no joke.
That's crazy.
Which not that many American soldiers died in World War One. I mean, relatively, they weren't that involved. I looked this up for this, and it's not like Europe.
We weren't that. We weren't.
Which is probably
we didn't care enough.
Like, just stay out of it.
Oh yeah, almost 5 million served and barely over 100,000 died. Yeah. That's pretty good. Pretty solid. Crushing it.
We killed that.
Crushed World War I. By the way, fun fact: the first colorized latex balloons, coming back to earlier, were not sold until the Chicago World Fair in the 30s.
Wow!
But balloons go back as far as the Aztecs when they used animal intestines or pig bladders.
Yeah.
I want to be that first person who looks at it and goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna blow air into this."
Right?
Just take the intestine and tie it off.
I remember like when I was reading Little House on the Prairie, and I like read that scene because it was like Laurie Ingalls was saying like, oh yeah, like they like got a pig and like they were gonna eat it, and then they were like, oh, and for fun, like we blew up the pig bladder, and like we all were like kicking it around the room, and I was like, oh, I was literally traumatized. I was like, oh my gosh, that is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in my life. Who does that for fun?
Didn't they also used to use pig bladders for condoms though back in the day? Or
probably.
Lamb.
Wouldn't be surprised.
They even today they still make like lambskin condoms, right?
Oh, okay.
So I think that goes back. Yeah, just using animal intestines for any of that stuff.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. They used cat intestines too.
Oh gosh.
There's this really fun picture or a depiction of 1773. There's just this little kid and he's just blowing into a pig intestine.
Oh god.
Hey, it's better than the plastic that ends up in the ocean.
Yeah, man.
Let's go back to pig intestine.
Could you imagine any kid today like blowing into a pig intestine? There'd be riots from all the soccer moms.
Yeah, definitely. All the soccer moms.
But I think that's it. You got any last thoughts?
Not that I can think of. I feel like we really dove into it.
Love it.
Okay.
Perfect. You can find us on all the things. modernlifepod@gmail.com.
All the things.
You can look at our funny pictures on YouTube, Instagram, Modern Life Pod. We're always on there posting when a new episode is up. You can also, if you don't have an app, always go to our website, listen to our episodes there.
If you don't have a phone.
If you don't have a phone.
Loser without a phone.
If you're Chris Pine and you only have a flip phone, you can
That's
go
a
on
thing.
there. Best Chris Pine.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming in, Brittni. It was
Thank
fun.
you.